here with us today. So good morning. My name is Vered Nohi, and I am Executive Director of the Philadelphia Israel Chamber of Commerce. Again, wonderful to see so many of you here. If you can, please mute yourself. We encourage you to show your faces because this is a community and it's terrific to see all of you here. Just to introduce myself, I've been the Executive Director of the Philadelphia Israel Chamber of Commerce for the past 7 years already. We are a nonprofit independent, and our goal is to connect companies and academic institutes in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware for joint ventures, and that is with Israeli companies, leveraging on the terrific innovation coming from Israel. In addition, we work with companies individually to strengthen the bilateral trade, scheduling B2B meetings with companies, taking them to Israel, hosting various events and conferences where we facilitate the trade. And of course, we host these kind of events and others also to bring you the latest and greatest from Israel. In addition, in 2017, we helped the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania form a memorandum of understanding with the State of Israel for innovation. The following year, it was New Jersey that signed an agreement with Israel. And also, we work with Thomas Jefferson University hospitals to achieve an agreement. And currently, they're receiving $1 million a year for 4 Israeli companies to pilot and commercialize technologies in their system, which is phenomenal. We're now in the second round for second call for proposal, so that's terrific. In addition, we have a very interesting role. We represent the U.S.-Israel Binational Industrial R&D Foundation. This is a fund established in 1977 by Israel and the U.S. to push innovation forward, create R&D jobs. Annually, 30 grants nationally are given to Israeli and American companies that innovate, and we try to facilitate more projects here in our region in many technologies, many industries. In 2019, we had 3 successful projects here, and we anticipate at least 3 submissions this coming September. So reach out to me if you need access to up to $1 million grant per project. What else? Since COVID-19 started, the PICC has been very busy helping the State of Israel and the 3 states here obtain PPE, also aiding different innovators like in ventilators and other medical devices develop their innovation. We help the Economic Mission promoting different events that spread the news about Israeli innovation in COVID-19. And we're here for you if we can help you with your technologies. Right now, what we're trying to do is to create events like that and work with companies to help the economy in Israel and here bounce back as fast as possible, enabling technologies that will bring us back to the workplace safely and improve our lives. So this is a super pleasure today to host a great panel of speakers. I will not take the role of the moderator and introducing all of them. It is my pleasure now to introduce a powerhouse in sprucing the economic mission of Israel here. He has the economic mission in New York, but also does a lot of activity all the way to the East Coast and nationally with huge events this year on the COVID-19, but of course other as well. This is our friend Inon Elroy. His fancy title is Israel Economic Minister to North America. He works daily with us and many others to bridge the Israeli and American partners for innovation. He has extensive experience doing so as Vice President and Director General for the Israeli Ministry of Economy and Industry between 2012 and 16. In addition, he headed the economic mission both in France and Germany. He worked on so many different initiatives on behalf of the Israeli government pushing digital transformation and innovation in many fields. In addition, he serves on the board of binational funds like the Bird Foundation, SIRD, and Coral. And it is a pleasure working with him for the past 4 years. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Inon Elroy. Thank you.
Thank you, Vered. Good morning to all of you, and good afternoon to Dov and the other Israelis which are with us today. As the coronavirus continues to spread, our thoughts are with all who have been impacted, especially in time of uncertainty. We must band together as a global community. on behalf of the Foreign Trade Administration of the Ministry of Economy and Industry in Israel and the Israeli Consulate in New York, I would like to welcome you and to thank you for joining us for this session. Special thanks to the Philadelphia Israeli Chamber of Commerce and especially to Vered Nohi for this initiative, and to many others that has been and will be featured in the future. As Vered said, we are very happy to and grateful to have the PICC as our partner. We're privileged to have with us today maybe one of the most famous ambassadors of the Israeli high-tech industry, Mr. Dov Moran, which will share with you his views and vision, and many other distinguished guests which have some interesting experience with Israel. For those of you who are not very knowledgeable about what's going on with Israel, just 2 sentences about it. Israel still leads the global leadership in R&D. The national expenditure on civilian R&D is still beyond the highest in the world, 4.3% of the GDP. We're talking on the fact that in Israel there were about $22 billion exits of startups that have been bought or acquired by other companies, global companies, many of them Americans. $8.3 billion capital was raised in Israeli funds in 2019, and so on. You may like to know that currently Israel is clearly one of the, let's be modest, between the most, I would say, the 10 most interesting innovation hubs globally. We can think of about 1,000 innovative companies in health and life science, maybe 250 in water technologies, 300 in cybersecurities, 800 companies in new media and internet, 200 in agriculture, and about 300 to 400 in smart transportation. We didn't speak about advanced manufacturing because I'm sure that Dov will share with you about it. So what's the bottom line, and what do you may like to think about it, is that when you're looking for anything that could help your companies to be more profitable, more sustainable, have a premium, Israel is clearly one of the places that you would like to look and to explore. And for that, we as the Israel Economic Mission, together with the PICC, will be very happy to support you and to help you to scout in Israel. As Vered said, we're very fortunate to have the Bird Foundation between the US and Israel that you could use in order to get support and decrease the risk of joint R&D cooperation and projects. So thank you very much, and I wish you all a very interesting discussion. Thank you, Vered.
Thank you, Inon. Thank you for joining, and thank you for the continued support. We couldn't do it without you and your staff. And it takes a village of many people in Israel and many people here to create this bilateral relationship. So again, thank you. I have to also thank a few people that made this event possible. First of all, we have terrific partners in the region that help promote the event besides the consulate, the Economic Mission and the Consulate. Angel Venture Fair, Delaware Crossing, Delaware Sustainable Chemistry Alliance, the Mid-Atlantic Diamond Ventures, PACT in Thai, Philadelphia. Thank you for sharing with us this opportunity to provide this speaker to our community. Also, I'd like to thank the many sponsors of the Philadelphia Israel Chamber that sustain us. We are a membership organization, independent, so you're always welcome to join us, but thank you for upgraded members. I will, just a second, I'm sorry. How do you do this? Stop sharing. Stop sharing. Here I go. I would like to now introduce my dear friend and board member who helped me organize this fantastic event. Shouvanik Chatterjee is, now I have a blank. sorry, is our board member and a global leader with Indogene. He's an entrepreneurial leader with more than 20 years of executive management and leadership experience in healthcare and financial services. He has successfully led companies through their stages of growth and progression by leading globally diverse teams, successful mergers, and diversity and capital raises. Prior, his leadership roles included Chief Operating Officer of Indogene Enzima, where he successfully led the sale of Indogene Group to Indogene Inc. in late 2016 and integrated both companies. He also was a partner and CEO of the Indogene Group, COO of Digitech Communications, President of ARMI, and Senior Vice President and in the parent company, AEGIS, an ESSAR group company, which has since been sold to Telefor Performance SA. Shouvanik holds an undergraduate degree in finance and economics and an MBA from Mumbai University. I couldn't do this fantastic event without you, Shouvanik. Thank you so much for your leadership on the PICC and in hosting this event. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Vered. That was pretty long drawn. I thought that it would just be a couple of sentences. So thank you all for making the time. I know it's a work day, but you know, it's rarely that you get two experts come together and provide their views. You know, I was reading an article last night which kind of said this correctly and probably set the stage up. I'm going to mention this. I'm going to read this out from the article. It says that John F. Kennedy once said that crisis in Chinese is composed of two characters, one representing danger, the other opportunity. From a context perspective, it couldn't ring more true than now. Okay, every crisis presents us with a choice, and from what's going on today, I don't think that I think all our lives have been upended in more ways than one. The pandemic itself has literally shuttered the economy in various countries to certain degrees. Fortunately, Israel is not one of them, and you know, just in the U.S. and a couple of other countries, there are winds of change. There are social protests. There's just societal changes that are happening here. So, with me, I'm fortunate to have two great people, both of whom, one is a friend and the other is a person who I've met a couple of times and I had the opportunity of interacting with, who are in unique positions to address some of these challenges. So I have the honor of having Dov Moran and Jeff Berkowitz with me to talk in the next 45 minutes about how are these challenges impacting our lives, you know, and within that, very specifically in their domains, what are the opportunities that these are throwing up? What are some of their takes? Dov, as he requested me yesterday that he would like to introduce himself. That's humility personified. But Dov's inventions and his creations touch our lives on a day-to-day basis. He invented the pen drive, which eventually became the zip drive and other forms of memory that we all use. So please join me in welcoming Dov Moran, and I'll turn this over to him for him to speak for a little bit. And I'll just spend 1 minute before I turn this over to Dov. After Dov speaks, I'll request Jeff to speak for a little bit, and then we'll go into a Q&A session where I will be moderating some questions to them. And at the end, we'll request you to send your questions to Vered so that we can pick a few and ask questions to the panel. If that's okay, without further ado, I'll turn this over to Dov Moran.
That's great. Shouvanik, first, thank you very much. How much time do you want me to speak? Give me some time frame.
So the first part, 10 or 15 minutes would be great.
Perfect. Okay. So first, thank you very much for all for joining, coming. It's a pleasure, and I'll use my 10 minutes in order to tell you a little bit about myself, and maybe through the story of my life, in a way, as much as we can do in 10 minutes. I'll try to give you some feeling for the Israeli mentality, what's unique about this country, and maybe I'll try to shed some light on entrepreneurship, and maybe I'll touch a little bit the issues of how do you deal with disasters, because we are in a disaster situation. So I'll begin with myself. I'm Dov Moran. I'm Israeli. I was born here. I went to the Technion to study computer and electrical engineering prior to joining the army. In Israel, everybody needs to go to the army or Air Force or Navy, but you can study. If you're a good student, they allow you to study engineering, things like that, and then you join the Army, Navy, Air Force to serve as an engineer. That's what I've done. And joined the Navy, actually to the microprocessors department. The strange stuff, no microprocessors this time at the Navy. So our first jobs was to read papers, which was interesting, learned a lot, but through the time, more and more things became microprocessors based. And I was very lucky because this was very, very interesting. And I was really the edge of technology, and we could touch actually everything that was there in this new area. And when I ended my service after 8.5 years, my department, which became very, very large, dealt with 23 projects. All of them are microprocessors based, variety of software, many subcontractors from the whole world. And when I left the Navy, I said, hey, I'm a smart guy. I know how to deal with, I know what's microprocessors, I know programming, I know, and let me do something big. And I'll open my own company because I'm smart enough to have my own company. Now, clearly, all of it was a mistake. I had no clue about business. That's reality. And by the way, you can smile, yes? You don't have to be very serious. Okay, please do me favors. Thank you, Orna. Okay, so I opened my first company, and they took me, you know, they're talking about raising money. And these days, when I thought about the need of money, I couldn't think about raising, means how can you raise money? You can raise oranges, you can raise flowers, but you cannot raise money. Actually, my father used to tell me, money does not grow on trees. I don't know which of your parents came from Poland, but that's a very famous statement in Poland. Money doesn't grow, you have to work for money. So I opened a company. There was no one to raise money from in Israel. There were no VCs in Israel. Actually, there were no startups in Israel, almost no startups. Very, very few companies. Majority of them dealt with military stuff. But of course, all of this was changed over the years. The company which I established was M Systems, and M Systems grew and grew. And actually, as larger we were, the faster we grew. So if at the year 2000, our sales were $45 million, that's the revenues, $45 million. 5 years later, 2006, our revenues were over $1 billion. And of course, the USB flash drive, that's one of the inventions, was one of the drivers for this extensive growth. There were other components all related to flash data storage. Many of them were my ideas. I have about 60 patents. And then came SanDisk and acquired my company for $1.6 billion. And everybody said, wow, what an achievement. That's a great great number. But I did not want to sell my company. Actually, if you look backward, you see that the number could be much higher. He said, these days, this is how many years ago? 13 years ago. end of 2006. This was, there were many acquisitions later at a much higher prices. Still, I voted for because I saw, because of situation that I won't go into, but in generally, everybody around me said, "Hey, great success," and I felt that, hey, what's a failure? Yeah, that's the story of my life. Yeah, you'll get to the other story. You see. And then I established another company because I'm an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurship is something which is in your blood. It's in my DNA. It comes from my grandfather, which was an amazing entrepreneur. So I established another company to do modular phones. Long story, bad timing, and timing is very crucial when you deal with startups and raising money and growing companies. Timing actually is the most important factor when you are looking at the potential of success of companies. Of course, you can't dictate timing, and whenever you think it's a great time, it might be the bad time. You know it aftermath. Model was established in beginning of 2007, but what happened there at this year, 6 months after we were established, Apple came with iPhone, okay? The whole concept of modular phones that you can actually construct yourself. I have one of them here. Yeah, here it is. Now that's the core of the phone, yeah. As you can see, it's very small, yeah. So I'll put it in, if you see that phone, that's the regular phone, that's the other one, yeah. That's the sizes. So all the issue of small phones and the small form factors, the modularity, hey, everything becomes iPhone-like. And the worst thing, which is similar somehow to our situation today, we had 2008, when we went to raise money, the big chunk of money required to run this company, we had, of course, the subprime disaster, okay, crisis. And it is very difficult to raise money in situations like that. And I'll refer to that maybe later on as an answer to the question of Shouvanik. So we raise money, we raise from the wrong investor. When you raise money, sometimes some entrepreneurs have this idea that money is money. Money has no smell. You probably heard this statement. Money has no smell. Money probably does not have a smell, but investors do have a smell. And it is very important, actually, the question of who are your investors is very crucial. Today, when I move to the other side, I'm now at the side of the investors, I do understand it's not related to us, but it's related to other companies where we didn't invest. Who are the investors, how crucial is it for the potential of the company to succeed? One might say, hey, Andreessen Horowitz are a great fund. By the way, they are a great fund. Ben Horowitz is my twin brother. I love him. I know the fund very well. And therefore, because they are a great fund, they are succeeding with their companies. But one can take it the other side. Because they invest in companies and they are Andreessen Horowitz, which is a very good fund, the companies succeed. Now, what's the egg, what's the chicken? I don't know, but investors are important. And at Modu, because of the timing, we picked investors which were incorrect. I made many mistakes. For example, timing of raising money, I waited. I said, hey, let's wait. We have time. We still have enough money. And then when I went to raise money, that's at Modu, I went too late. And then we didn't have a choice. We took money from the wrong investors. And there are, of course, other stuff that led us to actually fail. And the meaning of failure is that we didn't succeed to return back the money to the investors. We returned some of it. And we finally sold the patents and technology to Google. And everybody said failure. But you know, when looking backward at what happened to you, what happened out of Modu, came out to the Israeli ecosystem about 30 companies, 30 companies, variety of ideas and concepts and activities. The concept at Modu was be innovative, come with any crazy idea. We can kill Nokia, they died without us, yeah. We can kill Sony Ericsson, oh, they died without us. We can fight with everybody. We just need to be very, very innovative. Let's be the most innovative company in the world. Let's do something that no one else has done. Let's be bold. We want to be bold. Well, we did all of this. It didn't help us because it's not enough. Money is still required and important. But out of that came people that said, hey, we didn't succeed at Modu, but now we are 3 guys working together in this department. Let's establish a company to do this idea that we had at Modu in order to bring it to the market and create success. So today, looking backward, I say, hey, Modu was a great success, actually. By the way, in parallel to Modu, I was requested to be the chairman of FAB in Israel called the Tower Semiconductor. FAB is the place you build the component, and the Tower were in a big trouble. And actually, I took I was requested to do it. I did it for free, no salary, no options. I said, I'll come to help. And Tower, while Modu failed, Tower succeeded to stay alive, which is not not simple, was not very simple, made a turnaround, and today it has a value of several billions of dollars. And I'm actually, if I look at my business activities, of whatever I've done all these years, maybe Tower is my biggest success. And by the way, in Israel or anywhere, almost no one knows that I did this turnaround, but you know, that's part of life. Sometimes you do things for your heart, not just for the money. That's the best things actually that you can do in your life. And then after that, I established a few more companies. Took me a few years to understand that if I want to invest, if I want to be involved, the right thing to be done is to do it through a venture capital fund. So we established, me and my friends, Raw Ventures, which is a very unique venture capital fund investing in Israeli companies, early stage, deep technology, where deep technology is semiconductors, sensors, artificial intelligence, machine learning, science. These are the things that Israel is excelling in. And that's where we are working very close to our companies, trying to create not 1 or 2 success stories, but many success stories. That's about me, my life. Israel, great place. Shouvanik, what's the question you want me to answer now?
So, Dov, what we will do is we'll let Jeff do the same, like you speak a little bit about that, and then we'll go to the Q&A if that's okay with you.
Perfect. Yeah.
But so I'll take a minute to introduce Jeff, and I'll let him do the same. Talk about himself. Jeff is a pharma executive, very well known. Very recently, Jeremy Levine put together a book where Jeff wrote a chapter, and you know, we work together sometimes. And more importantly, it's been a pleasure knowing Jeff and working closely with him. So just a quick bio of him, and then he will do more justice to it than I would. So he's on the board of a bunch of publicly traded large pharma companies like Lundbeck, Esperion, etc., and understands the pharmaceutical industry from very close, both from where he sits and all the other nuances. So it's interesting to get Dov and Jeff's perspectives on what's going on in this world. But again, what I will do is I'll turn this over to Jeff to talk a little bit about his background, and then on the overall situation. Maybe Jeff, in this spiel, you could talk about some of the things that you wrote in the chapter in the book in the biotech book. Okay, over to you, Jeff.
Yeah, Shouvanik, thank you so much. And Dov, you're a very hard act to follow, so I appreciate it. It's humbling to be considered on a panel to discuss with you. So really appreciate your background as a first-generation college student myself. That entrepreneurship and making your own way in the world is really important. It's certainly been a hallmark of my belief set as well. Also, really appreciate being included by the Philadelphia Israel Chamber of Commerce. Have strong ties to Israel. I'm actually an advisor to the Israel Biotech Fund, and was last in Israel in November, actually, fairly recently in Rehovot, meeting with a bunch of life sciences firms. So I actually won't bore you too much with my background. Again, humbling to hear Dov's. I probably did exactly the opposite of what Dov did. Wasn't smart enough to start my own company. Actually, spent.
You were smarter. Hey, you were smarter than me. I was
No,
the
I can tell you that is definitely not the case. But I actually have spent the past 30 years essentially in Fortune top 30 companies, going almost from big to bigger to biggest, although I'd say some of the hallmarks are similar in terms of the willingness to take risks. I'm oddly, my dirty little secret is I'm a lawyer by training, and spent about a decade as a lawyer at a large firm in New York. I'm New York born and bred, which is why I speak so quickly. So apologize for that. And then I moved over, as Shouvanik said, into a pharmaceutical company, first as a lawyer, but took a unusual risk to leave the law department and move over to the business side, and really spent the better part of 13 years working for a company called Shearing Plow and Merck, running, being responsible for market access. So really my career passion is making sure that patients can access affordably the innovations that are brought to market by pharmaceutical companies. And that has certainly become critically important in the pandemic world that we're living in. So spent 13 years really being responsible for all of the pricing decisions and reimbursement decisions for Merck, as well as all of the negotiations with payers on a global scale. Then took another risk and made a really unusual move and jump out of pharma, which people usually stay in their vertical silos of business, and have Dov said, trying other things. Moved over to Walgreens, which is, for those in the States know, one of the largest distributors of drugs in the world. Fortune top 30 company. They distribute 1 in 4 prescriptions in the United States. And I was an executive committee at what has become the Walgreens Boots Alliance, which is now a massive global company with retail pharmacies in the US, Mexico, Latin America, Middle East. And for those of you that have been to London, Boots is also a part of that. And I was responsible for the drug supply chain and all of the procurement for products. So one of the interesting learnings there is, how complicated the vaccine market is, for example. So I was responsible at Walgreens for buying more vaccines than anybody in the world. And we distributed about 14 million vaccines on an annual basis, which was a massive, complicated undertaking. So you can imagine the idea that we all have that a vaccine will be available for COVID-19 in some type of short order, and we will be able to distribute billions of vaccines when we've had when it's difficult enough to distribute millions. But anyway, spent 5 years at the Walgreens Boots Alliance, and then moved over to United Health Group, which some of you may know. That was sort of the biggest firm, $250 billion company, Fortune top 6 firm in the United States. And I was the CEO of their international division, and also ran strategy for their pharmacy division in the United States. And so one of the main lessons learned, having been through what are vertically siloed healthcare organizations in the United States and globally, were the massive disconnects between those industries. Even though they need to work together to deliver healthcare. I thought I knew everything about Walgreens and United Health Group when I was at Merck for 13 years, and I started at Walgreens, and within a week, I realized I absolutely knew nothing about this company and how they made money and what was important to it. So I spent 13 years saying what a partner Merck was to Walgreens, and then when I got there, realized that they weren't a partner at all, because we didn't understand the business. And likewise, going from retail pharmacy to one of the largest payers in the world, realized the exact same thing, that we were talking at each other and not really partnering. And so Shouvanik mentioned a book of chapters that's been put by Jeremy Levin. Some of you certainly on the phone from Israel know the name Jeremy Levin. He was the CEO of Teva for a fairly short time, complicated set of circumstances. He's now the chair of the Bio organization, which is made up of about 1,000 biotech firms on a global basis. They just had their international convention virtually just last week, so a busy week. But he put together a book of about 45 thought leaders in the delivery of healthcare, scientists, pharma executives, people that have worked throughout the supply chain and policy, people like the former head of the CDC, Julie Gerberding, and he had asked me to write a chapter, and one of the themes that I touched on was the disconnect that we have throughout the healthcare delivery ecosystem, and how important it is to figure out ways of working together to solve some of the issues that we're facing, particularly as it relates to COVID-19, which was partially the topic for today. So some of the themes that Dov talked about in his career and his incredible humbling success of trying unknown models and taking risks and from your heart that you know are the right things are some of the lessons that we should be learning right now through this COVID disaster. Shouvanik, you quoted JFK in the chapter that I wrote for this bio book. I actually quoted loosely Machiavelli, who basically said, "Don't waste a good crisis." That was sort of the basic ideas, which is don't waste a good crisis. And in that example, you know, I said, and this is even true in the Israel biotech industry, from a pharmaceutical perspective, everybody is going after rare and orphan diseases with small populations that they believe will be immune from the global price pressures that the pharmaceutical industry feels. Yet I think what we've learned from COVID-19 and the pandemic are that there are broad healthcare issues that need to be solved. And as an industry, we walked away from those a little bit because we were trying to solve our own problems versus working across the healthcare ecosystem to try to solve problems cumulatively. And I think one of the lessons that we've learned from the pandemic is, you know, trying to figure out a way to reconnect all of the dots across that to solve this problem, this and other vexing healthcare problems together. So with that, Shouvanik, I think I'll shut up and maybe turn it back over to you. If that was
no, that's thanks, Jeff. This is really interesting perspective, and thanks for the way so timely. That's why I think that this combination is important. So without further ado, what I'll do is I'll just dive straight in. Dov, I'll ask you one question, and I know that when we chatted, you said you mentioned this, and later on I got to know it from other sources as well. So Dov was a part of the task. He advised the Israeli government on this, on the pandemic. And as we all know, Israel was probably one of the least impacted countries with this. And it has opened up well without the quote unquote, the second wave creating a lot of problems. So Dov, would you mind, would you talk to us about that to the extent that you can, and tell us about some of the strategies, and also give us a perspective of without getting into too many details and without you know, unruffling anything that's going on here, just give us some ideas of things that could potentially happen in the US. make so if you could do that, would very much appreciate it. First, starting with what you did in Israel for a COVID-19 pandemic, and then talking about a little bit about what we could learn sitting here in the U.S.
Well, I was in a team that was consulting the economy minister of Israel, and my job was mainly at the issues related to high tech, not to the other stuff. But in general, we did have a general discussion. The message was that you need to keep a very, very unpanic approach, not to get into panic. And it's very easy to get into panic and to go from one philosophy to another very fast, as happened in England, or Sweden, from saying, hey, it's nothing, it's a flu, to going to a severe closure of any activity, which would cause and will cause huge damage to many, many people that will lose their jobs. And losing job actually has a meaning that relates to life of people, because desperate people, people with no job, people which see no hope, their life expectancy and life quality would be low, and you can't ignore this part of the equation. It should be part of the equation. So our approach in general was, let's get back into life, but keep a lot of care about the elderly people, where the influence there is critical, of course, and don't do anything which require many people to stay together. So we said you can open workplaces, offices, whatever, with regulations. You can allow transportation, but transportation in a specific way that people are not really condensed all together. No sport events, no weddings, or weddings, but weddings with very few invitees. That in general, specifically about high tech, as I told you, I said it several times, I'm a very lucky guy. We raised our second fund right before the COVID-19 appearance. And therefore, we have no problem of money. We have enough money. We raised more than we planned. Actually, raising money for us after the results we had at the first fund was very, very easy, very fast. But there are many other funds in Israel that did not raise money. And if they don't raise money, they cannot invest money. And if they can't invest money, then the high-tech in Israel would suffer. And high-tech in Israel is very crucial. I'll tell you an amazing data. About almost half of the Israeli export is coming from high-tech. And there's no other country worldwide where high-tech is so important part of the economy. And therefore, any hit to the Israeli high-tech would be very painful to the country. And actually, every dollar invested in high-tech is coming back to the government, tenfold. So we had several approaches how the government, without a lot of money, but with very specific things, encouragement things mostly, can really support the high-tech, which this kind of recommendations were accepted. By the way, through the process, the government was changed. The economy minister is another guy. There is another minister of treasure, which I met with him as well about 10 days ago, and he understands the importance. He's pushing forward. How can it apply to the US? I don't know. I can't tell you. I probably cannot give any recommendation to your president, yeah? Who can? That's another question. And every country has its own ecosystem, economy, strengths, weaknesses, and there is no one recommendation that can be spread worldwide to anybody. One thing which I can say to the audience, and that's a maybe important message, what I learned in my long life, if I count anything I've done, every problem, every disaster had its opportunities. And yeah, for some people it's very difficult, for some people it's great. But even if it's difficult, there is something there for you. You have to open your eyes. You have to understand. You have to understand what are the new things which are opened. If you dealt with the industry of airplanes or hotels, maybe try to move to something which is, would come. If you dealt with hardware or software, maybe move to biotechnology. Uh, Everybody has to look at how the world is changing. We are in the middle of a change. This is a very significant change. The whole world that medicine is going to be changed.
Yeah.
Personal medicine.
No, hold on to that thought. We'll come back to. I'll ask a question to both of you on that specific side. But I want to ask the same question to you, Jeff. As you look at I mean, the unemployment reports came out today. One point, it was, I think, about 1 million more jobs lost than consensus. As you see some of these things unraveling, and also in some states within the United States that are trying to come back from a pharma industry. So let me phrase this correctly. From being a pharma industry expert, how do you see, or what is your take on how this pandemic will get tamped down, especially given some of the challenges that we are currently having, societal challenges that we are currently having? Okay, one. And two is, when do you think will there be a reasonable treatment available to the people in the United States for either a vaccine or some other form of therapy that can potentially lower the risk of death within the society?
Yeah. Great questions, and a lot to unpack. I think Dov actually said something really important that I believe in completely, which is that every disaster or crisis creates opportunity. And certainly there are extraordinary losses and things that we can't understand. And some of us are so lucky to be in our homes with our children and have food and jobs. And so it's a disaster of incredible proportion, but it does create opportunity. There are opportunities there. And I think to your point, one of the things that we're seeing from a pharma industry or a healthcare perspective is the opportunity to do things differently. And that's also some of the lessons learned. I think what you saw as an immediate response, I think probably in Israel and other places in the country, but certainly here in the world rather, but certainly here in the United States, was the willingness to remove barriers that normally existed within our healthcare delivery system to help people. And the reason that we removed barriers is because we knew that they would result in a better outcome. So for example, payers willing to pay for and reimburse for telehealth visits, for example, which they would not do in the past. Payers willing to allow prescriptions to go through for longer periods of time or without additional prior authorizations. Pharma companies partnering with one another to look at data and put together clinical development programs together because they knew it would accelerate their efforts to find a potential solution to the problem that we're having, versus competing with each other viciously to get to an endpoint before the other one and then beating each other up on price or from a competitive perspective. So, certainly, one of the ways we will, to your first question, tamp down and sort of potentially limit the impact of this is by removing barriers to care that will allow us to solve some of these problems, but also, this spirit of cooperation that we're having, certainly from a pharma industry perspective. And my guess, Dov, is that it's happening from a high-tech perspective as well, to get to a solution or multiple solutions much more quickly than we would have done if everybody was going after a solution individually. I think, one of the questions for me, and again, why I say don't waste a good crisis, is can we let's hope that the genie is out of the bottle, that once this is over, or once people feel like they're going back to what they perceive as normalcy, that they will continue to take the lessons learned and move those forward and not retreat into old behaviors. So hopefully payers will continue to accelerate telehealth and access to care and continue to help remove the barriers to the delivery of care rather than going back to their old ways. And then lastly, Shouvanik, answer the question on the specific question on how reasonable it is to get to a cure or some sense of normalcy. And I think one of the unfortunate things we're certainly seeing here in the United States is that while it feels like we've been in this pandemic forever and for a lifetime, it's only been 12 weeks. And there's just so little that we know, yet it's also clear that the population is completely fatigued by the past 12 weeks and is trying to accelerate their entry back into normalcy. And that is going to come with some significant healthcare challenges. Moving forward, and we're already seeing that in the States with upticks in certain states that I'm in the New York metro area and we've actually come down, but Arizona, Texas, Florida are seeing these massive spikes. And again, it's going to be hard, to get everybody to ratchet back down. Now we're seeing Beijing, even New Zealand now have 10 cases. So this is going to be with us for a while. Drug development is complicated. Vaccine development, not only from the distribution perspective that I talked about at the beginning of my comments, is quite complicated, but all of the excitement around Moderna and vaccine development, it is difficult to do. My sense is, just from the data points that I have as a pharma guy and somebody who understands drug development, we are 2 years out of having a vaccine, if at all, that we know. All the excitement around Moderna, for example, there's a company that's been in business for 10 years and has really never brought a product to market. So I'm hopeful and I keep my fingers crossed and I wish the best for their success and all the partnerships that have been there. But just the tactical work of bringing a vaccine to market and getting it approved is going to take 18 to 24 months. And then you have all the execution issues of delivering just the delivery of a vaccine to billions of people around the world. So we're going to have to come up with other solutions, as Dov was talking about, in the high tech world and other ways to get through this as we drive to clinical solutions.
So I think we're coming to the top of the hour. What I'll do is I'll have Vered, if it's okay with you, and if it's okay with you, Dov and Jeff and the rest of the audience, I'm going to ask a question to both of you. And I know that my sister-in-law is actually dialed in from India. It's pretty late for her too. So here's the question. Talk to us about some of the opportunities that you're seeing, and it doesn't have to be specific to your industry. One of the things that both of you mentioned, and as I said earlier on in my spiel, that this is, every crisis has that opportunity to it because of very obvious reasons. It defrays a model, thereby creating some other models. Some of that we are already seeing. But let's get both your perspective on this quickly, and then I'll turn it over to Vered to end the session. Dov, why don't you go first? You already have a portfolio of companies that you've invested in.
I'll make it short. I know it's too late. It's late. But Jeff mentioned it, and I'll add to what he said. Clearly, for me, the biggest opportunity that we are seeing is related to health. Digital health would come. Remote monitoring, sensors, no hospitals or hospitals at homes must be there. Smart pharma, personalized medicine, all of it is going to come. I think that for many, many, many years, the whole health system was stuck into whatever works well. If it works well, let's not change. It didn't work well. It should work much better. The COVID-19 actually is giving a big push toward much better medicine, much better health systems.
Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I think just well said by Dov. I think what this is all allowing for, including forums like this, right? 3 months ago we would have never gotten together to have a discussion like this with 100 people from all around the world leveraging technology. And so the exponential acceleration of the acceptance of technology and what that means, and back to healthcare, even in clinical trial acceleration, enrollment, and things like that are a huge step change. And I think that acceleration will continue to have. I think lastly, the other thing I'll say is if there's any broad lesson learned here is that we are one global community. And as much as we believe that we are different countries, this pandemic has impacted everybody. Certainly we then have this pandemic of racism here in the US that we're grappling with at the same time. And I think we're learning incredible lessons about the global nature of our community, and the idea that, in many ways we are all the same, grappling with the same issues, and need to come up with solutions at a global scale together.
Well, thank you very much, Dov and Jeff. Appreciate it. This was hopefully the audience benefited from it. You liked it, and really appreciate both of you joining. And on behalf of PICC, I'm going to turn this over back to Vered for her to conclude the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Shouvanik. Thank you, Dov, Jeff, and Inon for joining us and enlightening us with your thoughts. And my bottom line here that I learned is, like, every crisis has an opportunity. So if Philadelphia Israel Chamber of Commerce can help you find your next opportunity, facilitate your next opportunity, we're here with many partners in Israel and in the region to help connect you to the right people to enable your next innovation. We have to be brave and innovative, and we're here to assist you. Also help you find funding for this if necessary. So please reach out to us. I'd like to also mention we are dealing with many different kinds of technologies. So our upcoming events include, if you like this program, please join us. On June 24th, we will feature technologies for the food and supply chain industries. This is in continuing with other programs that we're doing for the food supply. We're gonna make sure we have food in the future, water and everything else we need. Also, we will start with our gala series on the 28th, honoring Ed Satel. Information will come up pretty soon. And we are collaborating with TIE New Jersey on delivering more information on the Bird Foundation funding opportunities. We already had a very successful event last week and another one about a few months ago. So please join us and contact me. My information will be in the email that I'll send you. And I appreciate everybody for joining us today. I wish you to overcome this pandemic and the different challenges we're undertaking as best as possible. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank you.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
This was great. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Excellent.